Welcome to Let's Talk Careers. I'm Lisa Bauman. Please join us as we chat with Jessie Tang, passionate about quality and compliance. She's built her career in the cannabis industry, and a tidbit to her conversation is how she pursued her Master's of Science from the University of Wales, but in a really unique way. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Well, welcome, Jessie.
Yep.
Thank you so much for coming to this podcast. If you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to start off by introducing yourself. And what I like to do is encourage people to do it what I call the James Bond style. So I have a little bit of a trick that I teach my students. I always encourage them to, if you sort of think of James Bond, he was like, Bond, James Bond, right? But I encourage people to be like, first name and then a pause and then first name again and then last name. And then feel free to say something about yourself in terms of your current role or something that you're passionate about.
Okay. This is interesting. I've never done that before.
Yeah.
So my name is Jessie Tang.
Beautiful. That's perfect.
Yeah. So a little bit about myself. I am in quality assurance and compliance, specifically in food industry and the cannabis industry.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked in various manufacturing facilities, and from QA all the way to now, I'm more in the auditing and consulting side of things.
Cool.
Outside of the career, I am also very passionate about dancing.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm pretty serious about dancing, and I'm also part of a performance team.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Can we talk about that a little bit later on?
Yeah.
I'd love to find out more. So actually, I have a starting question that I like to ask people. What was your first paid job, either sort of as a young person or your first sort of like career job kind of coming out of graduation?
The first paid job out of graduation, I think that was working at a head office for a retail store.
Okay.
And helping them with food labels.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
interesting. How did you get into that role? Do you remember?
I was actually panicking after graduation.
Okay.
And like my peers, worried about finding my first job.
Right.
And like that first stepping stone.
Mm-hmm.
And I found it in the newspaper, actually.
Really?
Yeah. Back then, like we had to fax in resume.
Back
and
in
like,
the day.
yeah. Calling, like, did you get it? And then getting the call back and excited. Yeah. Minimum wage.
Right.
Just willing to take on anything.
Anything that goes.
Yeah.
So from there, tell me just a little bit about your sort of your career journey. Like, where did you kind of go from there? And, you know, how did you get to where you are? I was looking over your LinkedIn profile, and it's kind of a lot of different interesting opportunities that you've been through.
Yeah, for sure. That was my first job. I worked there for just under a year.
Okay.
And then I decided to go back to do my master's.
Okay.
Did my master's and I went back to my old job. Actually, I was a part-time dental assistant at the time.
Okay.
And because of the flexibility and I'm able to study and work at the same time. So I did that for about 4 to 5 years.
Okay.
And I remember submitting my thesis and I was like 38 weeks pregnant.
Okay.
Yeah. With my first baby then.
Yep.
And I was like, don't come yet. I need to submit my thesis.
We're not ready yet.
No, I know. And then fast forward, I took like a 6-month mat leave.
Yeah.
And then went straight to continuing working full time.
Yeah.
I worked in egg and dairy industry.
Okay.
And then every time I would change my job or change a company, I was always looking for like a step up or
Right.
at least some kind of growth. So I went from a quality assurance associate, so
Mhm.
like a junior entry level, to a quality coordinator. And I basically look over their food safety programs, making sure that their procedures are all written correctly.
Right.
People are following hygiene practices, things like that. And that was like the food side of things. I got into pharma and natural health just for a little bit because I moved and the opportunity was there and I moved up to quality manager.
Right.
And I worked there for like 3 to 4 months and actually something clicked and like, I want to get out of Vancouver. I was
Okay.
working in Vancouver, BC for like,
Right.
for many, many, many years. I grew up in Vancouver.
Okay.
Then I decided to move to Ontario
Okay.
for a change. Like I want to see more of Canada.
Okay.
Like I know Vancouver is my home, but I haven't seen the rest of Canada. So I want to
Okay.
move somewhere with opportunities. And also just like in the manufacturing world, I figured I need to be in a space where there is just land for these facilities.
Right.
So I had to move out of cities and just go into like smaller cities or towns. And as soon as I decided to move, my mentor from the job that I was leaving, he was already in the cannabis industry. So he actually connected me to a founder of a new cannabis startup.
Okay.
And that was during like just before legalization.
Right.
In 2017.
Yep.
And he said, they're looking for like a head of quality. And I was like, am I ready for this? Like, you think I'm ready? And he's like, oh, for sure, you are.
Yeah.
And for the first time, we're like, it's like your boss telling you that you're ready to step up. And that was really strange and yet exciting at the same time for me. Yeah. So I took that on. Yet that requires traveling between Ontario and back to BC.
Okay.
It's like I moved here, but I got to now fly back on a monthly basis.
Okay. That's a lot.
Yeah. Didn't really know what I was getting myself into. Okay. But I did that for almost 5 years. Yep. And the facility went from, there were like 5 of us, the core team. Okay. And it grew after 3 years. The company went public. We had 3 facilities. I was traveling between BC, Alberta, and Saskatchewan.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I had 2 kids, and I figured, I want more time with my kids. Right. Need more work-life balance and continue on with dancing and my passion on the side. Like with traveling, it's just so difficult. Mm-hmm. So then I decided to leave that job. Great opportunity, but I think I got to where I wanted to be. Right. So then I took on a job that was local in Kitchener. Right. Also in the cannabis industry. Right. Worked there for a year, and unfortunately the company closed down. Okay. Yeah. Then I kind of told myself after, working in quality assurance for I think 11, 12 years. Right. 12 years now. I was wondering like, what's next for me? Right. So I was a QA director with both cannabis companies. Okay. And like, what's next after that? Yeah. Many people think you're climbing up the ladder, the corporate ladder. Yep. And it's just going up. Like, but what's after that? Like executive, you want to be board of directors. Like, that's not what I want to do. Right. And I really, really don't like dealing with numbers. Okay. As you get up there, you have to deal with finance. It's like budgeting. It's just part of the job. You can't get away from it. And so I told myself, I want to do something outside of quality assurance. Okay. And so what's next? Yeah. I've always had auditing in my mind. I want to be an auditor one day. Yes. Just didn't have the opportunity. Not sure when. And so I started looking into that. I've had training kind of throughout my career in auditing, but never really did auditing. Yeah. So I started doing training, and now I am also an auditor. I thought about teaching, like in a corporate setting, you're training one-on-one. Right. A lot of times it's me training another person. Yeah. Even small group settings. Yeah. But then I thought maybe I should try teaching. Yeah. Yeah. And I got into Conestoga. And do you love it? Yes. Yeah. Started teaching part-time. The first course I taught, that was winter of, this year, January. I started in January. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I was teaching food safety. Yep. And really enjoyed teaching like a class of 40 or up to 45. Yep. Making that impact. Yes. And, students are learning from your experience and knowledge. And it's just 1 to 40 versus one-on-one. Yeah. So that was a huge change for me. And I also love that Conestoga provides so much training to their instructors. Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. I've taken a lot of the training as well. Can I go back? I want to ask you a couple kind of go back questions. You talked a little bit about sort of the decision to pursue your master's degree. Maybe you can tell me a little bit more about sort of why you made that choice versus another choice. I think what I saw from your LinkedIn profile that you were at the University of Wales. Maybe you can tell me a little bit about that as well. That seems really interesting that I wanted to kind of dig into. Yeah, it's an interesting program. It's a program hosted by University of Wales in UK. Yep. But the physical location was in Hong Kong. Okay. That's where my family's from. Okay. And so they had to fly their professors to Hong Kong. teach on campus. And then it was designed for students in Hong Kong.
Okay.
And I found this program and I had to fly to Hong Kong from Vancouver at the time, I think 4 to 6 times a year.
Wow.
And did that for about 2 years for the lecture part. And then for the thesis, it was online.
Right.
But why I got into that, I figured a bachelor's only got me so far. And if I wanted to be like in management, I needed something more that would kind of help with my growth in the future.
Yeah.
Also, that program was designed for inspectors, so food inspectors in Hong Kong.
Okay.
But I figured like the knowledge just transfers. Yeah. Maybe the regulations are a little different.
Right.
They also taught food standards that was based in UK, so it's called BRC.
Right.
And it's actually in the industry is very common. It's one of the top ones that's used in the food industry. So
it was well recognized.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I decided to just go for it. And I picked that program over another one that I was actually thinking of doing. It was full time and I wouldn't be able to work at all. Right. So I picked that one instead.
Yeah. So it's actually, I have a sort of a similar story because I went back to school in between some of my small people as well. So I can relate to the experience of, no, I'm not ready to have this baby yet because that's a lot, right? To kind of go through because you're trying to get the school and everything else done. And then, so to begin with, I'm actually also curious, why like auditing, why food, why, inspection, like what was your kind of interest in making that sort of a choice, right? Because it's not a kind of a usual career path, but why were you interested in going down that route?
Interesting question. I guess I started off with, I wanted to go into science, but wasn't sure what field within the science department. And I applied for science. I didn't get into science. So the next best bet was food science.
Right.
At UBC it was a different faculty. So like faculty of science and faculty of land and food systems is what they called it. And within the first year, I was still trying to figure things out. Do I want to switch to science? Right. Or do I want to stay in the faculty? And I think by the end of first year, I figured I do enjoy what I'm learning so far. Yeah. And also, if I were to switch back to science, I figure I might go into like microbiology and it's very specific versus what they were offering me. I was exposed to like economics, a bit of commerce, a little bit of like how to grow at a farm. We were looking at farms and visiting like dairy cows and just interesting. A lot of different aspects that go into you're not just learning about the food science or the microbiology or the chemistry. It's like very multidisciplinary.
Very interesting. So then it took you into food. And I think I heard that you said you went into health and beauty. Did you say that? I'm sorry.
Natural health.
Natural health. Yeah. So food, natural health, and then cannabis. Yeah. So just tell me a little bit about some of that experience. Like what drew you kind of into that industry, kind of in that pathway, like food to natural
health.
Natural health and then to cannabis.
Yeah. So the transition from food to natural health and a little bit of pharmaceuticals. When I was working at the first food company, they did like whey protein or milk protein powder. Okay. And that opened up to my knowledge of like, okay, there's like infant formulas and things that is like for health and not just looking at like creating cakes or snacks. So a little bit of an area where you have to like be a little bit more careful. Like these are babies consuming these products or like people who are, who may be ill or they have a weaker immune system, right? Mm-hmm. So when I went to natural health and pharmaceuticals, it opened up to like another world of like, these are different regulations. These are different requirements. You got to apply for different licenses. And I thought I wouldn't be limiting myself to just food industry if I were to explore other industries in the future. I'm seeing more, but I'm still applying the same skills. Mm-hmm. Like we're still, quality assurance, it's like you're still reviewing batch records, approving the product. It's like incoming material, goes through a process, out goes the product and you sell it and someone going to sign off on it. It's kind of the same thing. Right. But the next level is understanding what's required for that commodity. Yeah. And then going to cannabis, it was because my mentor and my boss at the time at the natural health company, he was already in cannabis. So that was like the networking. Yes. And I thought it's new. No one's going into it yet.
Right.
I can take the first step and see, is it worth exploring?
Mm-hmm.
If I don't like it, I'll just switch back.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, that's right. Quite interesting. So you talked about two other things. I want to pick up on these pieces.
Yeah.
You talked about having a mentor. I'm curious to know, what was that like, and how did you kind of find your mentor, and do you mentor other people? And what was the benefit of having a mentor kind of going through your career?
Yeah. I keep calling him my mentor. He was my boss, but at the same time, he was not micromanaging at all. He was always really encouraging. I find that he saw more in me than I saw myself at the time.
Yeah.
And he was telling me, funny with the cannabis industry, like, don't go for an A+ because like food and pharma is very like need to be up here with the bar. Cannabis, you don't have to set the same standard because they're growing in dirt. So I had that mindset. Okay, so like, let's not push too much. Like, let's just go with whatever is required and then slowly build more. Yeah. We can't do that with a startup company. It's different than like a well-established corporate setting. Right. Going back to mentorship though, I think it's someone who is always there to kind of give you guidance, but not tell you what to do. Right. He was never bossy. Yes. And sometimes he would ask me a thinking question. Well, how would you deal with it? Right. And so it's like helping my growth as well. So that's really mentorship that I appreciate. Yeah. And I do mentor other students as well. Awesome. I've been part of the UBC Land and Food Systems mentorship program for about 4 years now. Okay. And what do you think of that? How just describe some of the things of that experience for me. I really enjoy it. Yeah. Students reach out to me and connect, and I often ask them like, what do you want to talk about? Right. What do you want to learn? I don't want to just be like, give and this is what I went through, and there's only one way of doing things. But no, I try to tell them this is my experience. Yeah. And growth is not just vertical, it could be horizontal. So definitely explore whatever works for you. Yep. And a lot of times students especially the first and second year students, they don't really know what to do yet. So they want to hear more from others or their mentors. Yeah. As you move to like third and fourth year students, I kind of help them more with like interviews and resumes, just tips on preparing, what happens after graduation. Yeah. Yeah. I do enjoy that program. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. So my next question that I wanted to ask you was around the networking. You kind of hinted a little bit about networking. So tell me a little bit about how maybe some networking has helped you kind of make those next moves in your carears.
I would say in person, I'm really bad with networking. Okay. Being an introvert, especially, like, it's just harder. But I find that nowadays with everything being on internet and LinkedIn is becoming more and more, like, everyone has LinkedIn pretty much. It's easier. Yeah. And I've had the opportunity to reach out to a couple of auditors. Before I went into auditing, I reached out and I actually just asked, I want to know how you got into auditing. Yeah. I want to know how it's like being an auditor before I get into that. Can you tell me more about it? Yeah. And it really didn't matter what company they worked for or what type of audits, but I just want to get a feel of, do you enjoy your job? Yeah. 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 And if you don't enjoy it, like, tell me, what do you not like about it? Yeah, exactly. What are the challenges? Yeah. Yeah. So that's helped you in sort of making decisions around, yes, this is what I want to do, or no, that's not what I want to do. And then from there, it sort of expands to their network too. Like there was one, he told me, hey, I don't know about this area in auditing, but my mentor is experienced, so you can talk to him. So okay, I'll reach out to him. Thanks for connecting. Yeah. Yeah. That's the way to grow that, to grow those, to grow your network and to expand the networking. So, okay, switching gears a little bit, you have such a fascinating career. So interesting. Actually, there's a couple more places. I'm hoping we don't run out of time. A couple more places I want to go. So everybody sort of seems to think that our careers are just this magical, wonderful place that sort of, carries on and everything is, lovely and glorious. But in fact, when I'm talking with students, I'm trying to say to them, you're going to find challenges along the way, right? Are you willing to share maybe some of the challenges that you've had to face sort of throughout the course of your career as well? Yeah, I would say in any setting, this is what I tell candidates as well when I interview them.
Yeah.
Quality assurance and operations, doesn't matter what industry, they always butt head. Like, it's just the nature of the job.
Right.
Because quality assurance is there to make sure products are safe.
Yes.
They slow down and look at everything. You know, they
Yes.
take their time, look at details, all the records, versus operations is go, go, go.
Right.
Output, right? Gotta get that out the door.
Yeah.
We gotta get the money in. You know, that's just the nature of the job. And one wants to speed up, one wants to slow down.
Right.
And so those are some of the challenges that they will face if they end up being, you know, if you're in operations, you will have quality assurance coming after you and like, hang on a second, we need records for this. Yeah. And similarly, if they end up working in quality assurance, yes, you have pushback from operations and you just kind of have to work with that. Yeah.
So do you have any particular ways that you can try to sort of explain to people or sort of share with people, like different ways that you've been able to work with that? Because it clearly is two different, you know, push-pull, you know, priorities there, right?
Yeah.
What would be some of the ways that you've kind of helped to manage that?
Finding the balance, also being knowledgeable. If you know what the requirements are, you can then explain your stance.
Right.
Also just building that relationship, not just always saying no to everything. Right. You know, sometimes there's wiggle room, right? You can work with that or be like, you know, I can't give you 3 days. I'll give you 2.
Right. Yeah. Negotiating.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And finding that relationship. So we chatted, actually, let me go back to this spot. We chatted a little bit about sort of, you know, that work-life balance, trying to find that work-life balance and then figuring out that not always careers have to go up. Sometimes it can go horizontal. Maybe you could tell me a little bit more about some of the decisions that you've made in kind of coming to that, you know, finding that balance for yourself or continuing the journey of finding the balance for yourself.
I think it's an ongoing journey for sure. And throughout your life, your wants and what you want for your family is different, right? It keeps changing. Yeah. And for me, it was reaching the 3 to 4 year mark of traveling with that job where I was starting to miss my kids a lot and missing like their birthdays or school events, things like that made me start to think, you know, what am I going to do in the next year? And I kind of gave myself a timeline to figure that out. Yeah. And right now, I think like when we talked about like the horizontal growth is for me, it's not moving up the ladder, but like I want to have different knowledge. I'm able to do item number 1, 2, and 3. Right. But maybe some people can only do item number 1. Right. Kind of like that. And I also do consulting, and I think that helps me in that aspect is I know 3 industries versus some people might just be in food. Right. So having that knowledge is like your package, right? This is what I have to offer. Yeah. I think there's a lot of potential in that sense. Yeah. 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 That's quite interesting. Where do you, let's shift a little bit as we sort of talk maybe a little bit about, you know, the industry or and the different sort of places that you find yourself, but where do you sort of see some of the industry going, like in terms of like future trends, maybe, you know, how the big question is, how is AI going to impact our jobs, right? So maybe you could speak a little bit about what you see is happening in the industries. Yeah, interesting. We talk about AI a lot. We do. And like, you know, how to use it, how not to use it. I think in the manufacturing world, I can imagine AI and robots coming into play more often. I don't know if you've seen, like at Walmart, you see like robots cleaning the floors. Okay. Right. We can have more of that in manufacturing sites. Right. It'll help with reducing labor. Yeah. And also maybe I just imagine like talking to a screen. It's like how we say, hey, Google, play this song. Hey, whatever AI system, change the label to this. And it's just like so much more convenient than have to type it in. I can see that happening in manufacturing. Okay. Yeah. So do you see that maybe taking over jobs or maybe even creating more jobs? It will replace some for sure. Okay. But then you'll then need more people to create those robots or systems and maintenance. Yeah. And also people being more creative with like, okay, now you have this in place. We bought this equipment. Right. What else can we do with it? Right. So there's like engineers coming into play, continuous improvement, making process more efficient. You can maybe add more processes, then there's more output.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
yeah.
Definitely. I talk to students about that as well. I'm like, what I've seen so far, and I'm, it's just sort of the world according to me. But I've seen sort of, jobs being created because yes, it definitely sort of replaces other jobs, but that there might be the creation of more things. And I think what you've said is really kind of key is how can we creatively use these tools, right? And I think that's kind of an interesting piece. So what about sort of future career goals or future projects? Where do you sort of see yourself moving in the next little while as you progress through your career?
Yeah, I think this year was going through many changes for me, going from like just a standard, typical full-time job to multiple. And I'm still working on building that, like not to put all my eggs in one basket sort of thing. So I think of it as I will have something that's stable, regular, routine.
Yep.
Something that is high risk, but would maybe bring in more income.
Okay.
And then something that's kind of in the back of my mind. I don't need to really think about it, but it's like generating income.
Okay.
So working on that.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. I like that a lot, actually. Regular routine. Yeah. High risk, but big reward.
Yeah.
And a regular income stream.
Yeah. And then also part of that, maybe one of them is something that I like, but not necessarily my profession.
Okay.
Kind of like maybe something related to art or creative. I don't know. Yeah. I'm still thinking about that piece, but I guess like teaching is kind of regular.
Okay. Yep.
Because it's on a weekly basis.
Yep.
Auditing is high risk because you really don't know when you're going to get assignments, but they can also throw you a lot at once or like nothing for this week, a lot next week. Yeah. So there's that high risk and working on building my Airbnb.
Okay.
So hoping that will bring in, extra side income.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Side income. Yeah.
One day build my online store. That's going to be my creative side of things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that the piece that's kind of connected to like the dance and performance? Because I want to go there next.
Not there yet. No, that's just more my personal interest. That's like money spending, unfortunately.
Oh, I see. Yeah, we got to have some of those fun things too. But actually tell me a little bit more about that performance dance pieces. What does that also help you? I'm sure that also helps you get a sense of balance as well, right?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
I've danced as a kid, but not to this level, not like weekly and getting to performance teams and all. But I really started after having my first baby.
Okay.
I needed like my adult life back and be like part of something else outside of just baby talk every day.
Yep.
Working was not enough because that's still like just very routine. Yeah. I need something interesting, something you look forward to. And like, you get to dress up, look good and go out.
Yeah.
So I started dancing in the Latin dance scene in Vancouver.
Okay.
And moving here, started looking up for more dance classes. And then like performance teams is just so popular here.
Yeah.
And started getting into a couple of them. And now it's just like a regular thing.
Fun.
It really helps with, exercise, that's for sure.
Of course.
And then getting to know people. There's like network outside of your professional world.
Yep.
You could be meeting like other professionals, like doctors, lawyers, whoever, but we're all in the same room, same environment. We're just all just learning dancing. Yeah. We don't have to be like, I need to put up my, a manager hat or whatever. Yeah. Like, you can just be yourself.
Right.
So that was really nice.
Yeah. So is it still Latin dancing that you're doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just different styles. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Cool. Did you want to share some?
Yeah. I actually dance bachata, zouk, and also some heels dancing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know those, so I'm going to have to learn some of those.
Yes. Yeah. You might know salsa.
Yes.
It's kind of like around, in the same area. Yeah.
A little bit more focused. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. Well, that's very, very interesting. So what I'm curious to know, I know this one. Some of us have had kind of like a key pivotal moment in our career, and kind of flopping back around here. So I'm sorry about that. But have you ever had that like a key pivotal moment in your career that you're just like, this is what I need to do, right? And if you have, can you tell us about that?
I'd say I had a couple of those moments. The biggest one is probably deciding to leave the first cannabis job after working there for almost 5 years.
Yeah.
Making that decision of leaving. I was overseeing, 2 facilities.
Yeah.
and stop traveling and having to go back to like a more routine full-time
role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And local, like,
Yeah.
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 The decision there was, besides family and quality time with my kids.
Yeah.
Also it was like walking away from a little bit of like corporate dynamics that I wasn't enjoying anymore.
Right.
Over time. And that's the nature of growth within a company. You will see that everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. I can relate to those experiences for sure. What skills do you think students are going to need in the next, you're teaching and you're talking with students. What do you think they're going to need in the next, let's say 5 years?
In the next 5 years, I think first is keeping an open mind of learning.
Yep.
If that's your first job, get whatever knowledge you can, and then take that and bring that with you to the next job. Another thing I always tell my mentees, is don't be too, I guess, like keeping an open mind of like, don't just apply for jobs within your city or town and be like, I'm not moving, I'm going to be here.
Right.
Or if you are graduating from, let's say, food science, don't just look for food jobs. There are so many different industries.
Right.
Like, what about pet food? What about like cosmetics? Like, there's a lot of related industries you can get into that people don't really think to apply right after graduation.
Yeah. And
you might go into like a really concentrated industry.
Yep.
And you're missing out on other opportunities.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the third thing is also setting boundaries. And a lot of times being a junior employee, you might just do whatever your manager tells you. And sometimes even like deep inside, you think that this is not right. In terms of like professionally, but also like maybe at a personal level.
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel comfortable doing this.
Right.
But being able to actually say it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That takes a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It takes so much for people to be able to kind of have that confidence and be, familiar in their industry, and then be able to say it appropriately as well. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to leave the floor to you as the final thoughts. I think you've given some folks some really great thoughts in terms of going forward. Do you have any other last pieces of wisdom or advice or anything that you want to share as we kind of come to an end?
Last piece of advice. I think if I were to summarize, it's the two things that I mentioned. Don't restrict yourself with growth, not just vertically, right? Horizontally is also growth.
Yep.
So keep that in mind. And the second thing is setting boundaries and like what is okay for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Those are awesome words of wisdom.
Thank you.
Wow, what a great conversation. Thank you for listening to this episode of Let's Talk Careers. If you liked this episode and want to hear more, follow us on Spotify and subscribe on YouTube. See you in the next one.